After UFC Atlanta finished up, my friend, he sent me a really funny message. And I laughed at it for a little bit, but then it really made me think, holy crap, that would actually be a good idea. And it would probably be a nice career choice for many other fighters who possess more skill in building a scary and strong looking physique than skill in fighting. No UFC fighter has a physique on the level of these bodybuilders just because they're trying to pack as much muscle onto their frames as possible. And UFC fighters have to cut weight. Unless we're talking about like a 5'5" heavyweight, you're not going to see these types of physiques out of any UFC fighter. But overall, being jacked is a horrible thing to waste. So we're going to talk about different fighters who I think ought to hang up the gloves and pick up bodybuilding. And the first person that we're going to talk about is Andre Petroski. He has solid height at 6 foot even. He does have tattoos, but they aren't obstructing or taking away from Andre's musculature. He does have some pretty small shoulders, but they look to be larger in college. I'm sure he's doing more cardio-based training now that he's involved in MMA. Wrestling, you do need endurance, but strength is more practical for this. He has to be able to fight for 15 minutes, and a lot of that is aerobic, so a lot more cardio for him, I'm sure. There isn't a single reason for him to be getting walk-off decision by Edmund Shabazian, or walk-off KOing himself headbutting hips while trying to secure takedowns. With preparation, he could probably win the Mr. Olympia. This guy has a good frame for bodybuilding. Having been an addict for years as well, and then giving his life to combat sports, this is something that I assume helped him stay lean. He could have changed his dietary habits, but set points, especially if he'd been using for a long time, it was probably hard just for him to put on fat in general. Pertaining to steroid use, the fact that he was an ex-addict will make intravenously injecting testosterone easier for him. He was also crazy jacked as a college wrestler there too. This guy could totally be a bodybuilder. The same thing could be said for Michael Chandler, who would have infinitely more utility in the Arnold Classic than he does in the UFC lightweight division in 2025. Michael Chandler just has the wrong personality for fighting. But his positive attitude, I think it would be a good match for the fitness industry. And if he were to become a Greg Doucette type figure and he made a cookbook and he gave out advice on nutrition, I'd hear him out. Tell me you wouldn't listen to Michael Chandler's advice on what you should and should not be eating. Yeah, I'll go with what that guy thinks, because he seems to have it figured out. Iron Mike is ridiculously jacked, and he looks like a compact Jay Cutler as things are right now. So imagine if he just tried to put on as much muscle as possible. A different career path opens up for Michael Chandler since he is actually very physically strong too. He could be a power lifter. He pistol squatted Dustin Poirier to elevate him in the air with a single leg, and his training footage with weights is always Ronnie Coleman level. This guy puts an insane amount of work in the weight room. If Chandler gave you some fitness advice, would you think this guy has no clue what he's talking about? I'm trusting this guy Michael Chandler over Jeff Nifford if he made fitness content. I could see Michael Chandler on stage doing like the men's physique competitions where they do like this thing. They're like... Michael Chandler has the build for it. I think that he could be infinitely successful at this. The next two people that I'm going to talk about, it's going to be Julius Walker and Oumar Sy, need to both retire from MMA immediately and pick up bodybuilding. The UFC needs to either transfer all of their undefeated light heavyweight prospects with less than 10 pro fights on their records to the WWE, or just give them to powerlifting circuits or these classic men's physique circuits. Because every single one of them has done nothing but let me down. Both of these guys are 6'4", and they each have the potential to become Larry Wheels with enough steroids. Alonzo Minifield looks like Ashton Hall, and he has wins over both of these fighters. And that's just because he's stronger and more physical than each of them. And they won't be able to get it back against Alonzo Minifield, but they can solve that problem by just blasting trend and hitting the weights. The greatest comeback story would be both of these fighters never fighting again. They become a lifter duo like the Trin twins or the Hodge twins, and they start posting videos of their max bench, squats, and deadlifts, and they're all over 500 pounds with Linkin Park in the background. I would say that Oumar Sy has a better baseline for bodybuilding than Julius Walker. He has better proportions and what seems to be a lower body fat percentage. That boy Julius Walker used to be a hooper, so you know he wasn't taking weight seriously at any point in his career. I think that they could be very strong, though, if they did train outside of MMA. They could make more of a mark on competitive weightlifting than the 205 division in the UFC. Dober is the next fighter who needs to hang up the gloves and pick up some dumbbells. He was winning a ton after he locked in after getting beat up by Islam and losing a walk-off decision to my boy Brad Riddell. And then he went on a 3-win streak against Terrence McKinney, Rafael Alves, and King Green, all knockouts. And since then he's been chinned by Frivola, Gene Silva, and most recently Manuel Torres, who scored more violent knockouts than any of the clips that we've been talking about. Drew Dober is included. I like Drew Dober. He's a family man. He just had a baby after one of his fights. I think he did actually catch a win in the middle of all these losses that he had been taking lately. And he had a baby with him. And he won, and he was like, yo, that was for my baby. I was like, yeah, hell yeah, Drew Dober. And even if he loses his fights, I always end up saying at some point, either during his walkout or whenever he's in the cage, I'm like, dude, that guy is freaking peeled. So I see no reason for him to just continue to get sparked up like this while he's 36 and could be using his physique to win bodybuilding comps, since he is very aesthetic. He looks like an action movie, and this is a guy who's just like Michael Chandler, that he's so athletic that he could build a brand around his physique. I would watch Drew Dober do like the Joey Swole thing, where he's either commending or chewing out people who post gym content and reviewing it while he's in his car and he's looking directly at the camera with his colored eyes and he's wearing a backwards net hat. I would be into that Drew Dober content. I think he could stay relevant for a long time doing this. Paulo Costa, Paulo Secret Juice Costa. It's already a gimmick. It's already a weightlifting gag that he's been on the secret juice and he's been hitting the weights, but he needs to just dial into the weights fully, because this fighting stuff, one win in the last 5 years, and that was Luke Rockhold in 2022. Costa makes memes, so we don't really look into his fighting career that closely under a microscope, because if we did, we'd be in a perpetual state of roasting Paulo Costa. It's just that we know that he's not serious about becoming champion, so we don't expect him to behave like a guy who's aiming for the UFC gold. Unless he knows that fighting pays better than bodybuilding, he could surely use the Secret Juice platform to release a pre-workout and do shows internationally. His UFC persona will make him recognizable, and even with an altered training style, like how we talked about the UFC fighters have to do a lot more aerobic stuff. Andre Petroski lost muscle mass whenever he was wrestling in college to being a UFC fighter because he's probably doing a lot more cardio. Paulo Costa definitely got smaller since he was an ex-bodybuilder. He is still jacked and has one of the best classic style physiques in the UFC. And this is while he can't Hulk out because he has to make 185. He always looks ridiculously brawny in the cage, off season, on the scales. I think a transition back into bodybuilding as a career path for Paulo Costa may suit him well. He's already hanging out with Mike O'Hearn. What is love? Oh no, copyright. They did a couple of collab videos on both of their YouTube channels and Instagram pages, and I thought it was funny content. And you could definitely get in the gym with more high-profile bodybuilders and just become an influencer full-time. Totally. The thing about bodybuilding versus fighting is that if you are a guy who is an established contender like Paulo Costa, who's probably making at least like a couple $100,000 to show up, you're gonna definitely be making more money for the prizes that you win through the sport of fighting than through bodybuilding, because you just earn the opportunity to make new deals with brands and sponsors and grow your own brand through bodybuilding mainly. Costa is worth more to the UFC as a figure for their brand and as a fighter already, so it's unlikely that he would do this. But towards the tail end of his career, if he doesn't have any plans on going to box for a few extra paydays after he's done with MMA, he should just bodybuild. And I think that it would be nice for his brain health if he just considered doing it right now, like today. Johnny Walker. This dude was supposed to fight Azamat Murzakanov at UFC 316. Brinson Ribeiro stepped in to donate a KO to this division in Johnny Walker's place. And this is an instance of divine intervention. Walker has no chin anymore, and he lacks the danger to be able to land a big shot before he gets slapped himself. So he should just step away from fighting and start bench pressing or something. Walker is 6'6" with freakish strength and athleticism that would make someone who just got into the sport assume that he is one of the greatest fighters ever just because he does look the part. The issue is that airplane turbulence, earthquake aftershocks, and standing up too quickly are some of the ways that Johnny Walker can get chinned because he does have a glass jaw. And whenever he does get finished via KO, it's always the most cartoonish clip ever. And instead of doing this, Johnny Walker could instead prioritize putting on mass and become a top 5 most aesthetic human in the Earth's history. This guy's getting slept by 19-year-olds in sparring. No UFC win since Anthony Smith in 2023. Walker may just be training for health and fitness, and if this is the case, he should preserve his brain and be a Gymshark athlete instead of a UFC one. And the last fighter that we're going to talk about, Ciryl Gane, the toothless megalodon shark. Massive in frame and potential, but he genuinely stinks and he doesn't even care about fighting. So at this point, he should just start doing CrossFit or try and bench press as much as possible, because the UFC cannot keep on giving this guy title shots. A third loss in a third title fight in 3 years would not validate a new champion who would beat him, since Gane is so mid. Almeida has more of a right to hang around and get free title shots than Gane, because at least with Gilton, he has a path to victory against people that isn't landing a 1 in 100,000 strike that magically sleeps his challenger. The only reason why he's taken taken seriously Ciryl Gane is because of some experience he has in Muay Thai from back in the day, but mainly just because he's so large and also because he is mobile enough to throw spinning stuff too. You could very well be a streamer too, because like I just said, he likes FIFA Ultimate Team more than he likes fighting in the UFC. He should just compete in bodybuilding since he is such a specimen though. I feel like someone's gonna do it eventually. There's gonna be a UFC fighter who full-time transitions into streaming. Colby Covington is trying, but he's not popping off. There's gonna be a guy who gets really big on one of these platforms just streaming, and they're not gonna fight anymore. And that's gonna be the way that they get bread after they retire. It might be Ciryl Gane. He might just be playing FIFA Ultimate Team, FIFA 35. And it's just Ciryl Gane wearing a headset, and he's got the gap tooth, and he's laughing like how he does in the press conferences. If you're not going to get the belt, why even go through the trouble of getting CTE, you know? So that's just my 2 cents. If you did make it to this point, fellas, please do like, comment, and subscribe. I will catch you fellas in the next upload. Please enjoy the rest of your day.